and I was diagnosed with celiac disease.
Yeah.
But back then it was not that. It was almost like, take her home, feed her rice, and she will get better.
Welcome to the Healthy Celiac Show. I'm your host, Belinda Whelan from belindawhelan.com, and here you will learn to live your very best life with celiac disease. So we are going to be talking all about health-related topics because you, my friend, are more than just a woman with celiac disease. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss an episode, and welcome to the show. All right, welcome back to this week's episode of the Healthy Celiac Podcast. I'm so excited to have a wonderful guest on the show today, Lisa Mills, who I actually grew up knowing, and she's been living with celiac disease for over 50 years now. So I'm very excited to have her on the show and talk to us about her experience. So thank you, Lisa. Welcome.
Thank you. Eek, I was just like, over 50 years. Oh my gosh. That's a long time.
It is.
50. I know, 50. I'm 57. So
Yep.
I've been living with celiac disease since I was born.
Wow.
I was diagnosed at 18 months old. So that would have been around about 1960. I'm going to go 66. I was born in 64, so it would have been around 1966. So
wow.
yeah.
Just incredible. Like, to think that there's so many people now in 2022, as we're recording this, that struggle for years and years to get a diagnosis. And way back then, you were able to get a diagnosis. So what was the reason that your parents thought that, you know, they needed to check you out? What were your symptoms? What were you struggling from, Lisa?
I think it was my grandmother.
Okay.
It was my grandmother, because I remember her saying, like, I was just one of those, I was just always crying. Like, I looked like, you know, like a very malnourished child. I had the big belly.
Yes.
You know, and so because obviously, as we know, with, you know, celiac disease, you're not getting all the nourishment out of the food if you're not eating the right food.
Exactly.
But and I was just crying all the time and very sickly. And I think it was around about when I was 18 months old, my grandmother tells me the story that, like, they'd been taking me to the doctors, like mum had been taking me to the doctors, and it was like, oh, we don't know. And I think my grandmother, she just sort of went, and it was to the hospital back in the days, because there wasn't, you know, a doctor on every corner back in the, you know, mid-60s. But she basically said to the doctors, if you don't find out what's wrong with this kid, I'm going to leave her with you.
Give him the ultimatum. Go, grandma.
I know, right? So, yeah, I know. So thank goodness for, you know, powerful women, right, back in the 60s, who were strong enough to stand up to the doctors. And I was diagnosed with celiac disease. But back then it was not that. It was almost like, take her home, feed her rice, and she will get better.
Okay.
So that's what they did.
Yeah. So not much.
But you can't live on rice forever.
Yeah, no, that's right. Exactly. So they were able to pinpoint pretty quickly that it was celiac disease, or did they have to? Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Really.
No, from all accounts. I mean, like I said, I know we had been back and forward to the doctors. And so I guess at some point it was, you know, diagnosis by ruling out all the other things. But, you know, it was 18 months old and it was celiac disease. And they said, you know, take her home, give her rice and ice cream. But I don't even think ice cream back then was really gluten-free. But anyway, I don't think there was, you know, no talk of gluten-free diets. But then, you know, in all fairness, back in the 60s, there wasn't a lot of gluten-free food around.
No.
I'm guessing.
Oh,
not like there is today.
I mean, even in the last 10 years, I've seen such an improvement. So I can only imagine what it was like for your mum back then. Such a challenge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Far out.
So we never really stuck to the gluten-free diet, though. And I guess that was the thing. Once, you know, I was cured because I'd been eating, you know, rice and of course I was, you know, getting stronger and, you know, not crying as much and sort of growing and developing. over time, just went on to eat normal, or I shouldn't say normal, but, you know, food that had gluten in it.
Oh, did you?
And
Wow.
I was always skinny.
Yeah.
Always skinny. And, you know, back in the day, it was like, oh, I'm always skinny, but I was skinny for the wrong reason. So, you know,
Yeah.
I was not healthy. And it probably took until I had my first son, which was in 1989. I had a, before, so Danny was born in 1989. I had a colonoscopy, you know, not a colonoscopy, a colonoscopy back in, before that diagnosed me with celiac disease.
Okay.
But still, again, there wasn't a lot of gluten-free food around. So you were really relying on, you know, reading labels and that, and I wasn't very good at that.
Okay.
When I had Daniel, I was super, super, super tired all the time, like super tired. And I knew being a new mum was, you know, going to make you tired and was, you know, a different thing. But
yeah,
I ended up going back to the doctors and saying, look, I get it. Having a new child is, you know, can be, you know, quite exhausting, but there's something else going on. And in fact, the doctor I went to, she was really quite rude when I reflect on it. She was just like, oh, get over it. You'll be right. It's just, you know, being a new mum.
Oh, I had the exact same
But,
experience.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
So it turns out, though, I did go back and I went and saw again a specialist and got re-diagnosed, I guess, with celiacs, and then tried to live a more gluten-free lifestyle, but incredibly hard, even back in the, you know, 90s. Incredibly hard.
Yeah, definitely. So have you found that it's got easier since then? Like, it's been a different journey for you since finding out, I guess, for the second time and knowing better?
Yeah, look, you know, it is much easier now. The array of food that's available is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And, you know, even the better labeling on foods, all those things make a difference. And I think, you know, I'm pretty fortunate in the sense that, so, you know, having celiac disease is you have celiac disease.
Yeah.
And it's no good, you know, eating any amount of gluten is no good for you. Exactly. But having said that, I know that if I do eat some gluten, I don't get as a severe reaction as some other people get. So, you know, I guess over the, you know, sort of through the 90s and over the last probably 20 years or so, I'm certainly not a doctor. I've probably tolerated feeling unwell more often. But now it's like probably I'd say the last 5 years, it's just an absolute, you know, there is no room for, and probably the last 10 years, to be honest, absolutely no room for gluten in my world anymore.
Yeah, good.
And I'm very, very strict. Yeah. And it is easier, and it's easier to go out and eat, although I still find some restaurants are really, you know, not celiac friendly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's an issue. And even if you ask, it's like, I went to a restaurant, I won't say where I was, but I did go to a restaurant. And I did say, and I was having breakfast actually, and I did say, you know, can I have, you know, eggs on gluten-free toast? Oh, you're a little petal, aren't you? You little softie. I know. I was like, it was an older woman. So I was sort of, you know, I was like, oh, you know, I was very kind and gracious, but there still is that around that.
Yes, it still happens.
I find that you still get looked at quite weirdly. And in fact, even on a TV show, I was watching a TV show the other day, a cooking show, and the cook or the chef, I'm not sure which one he was, but he actually even said, you know, celiac disease, gluten intolerant, same thing. And I'm like, in the lounge room, no, it's not. No, it is not.
There's a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of people don't know. And yeah, it's very important for us to educate and share what we know with people, definitely. But like you say, it's definitely got easier, and you will find those dodgy restaurants and places, but there's so many more that are very accommodating and go above and beyond. That's for
absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Those ones where they actually ask you, do you have celiac disease?
Yes, I love that.
And then you know that they're actually going to go and do cook your food in all the right ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. And that makes me, feel confident, because sometimes I do walk out of places and I'm like, not sure that was gluten-free, to be honest. And we are trusting that people are doing the right thing.
Our health, aren't we? So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing. So I know that you travel a lot, Lisa. I follow you on Instagram and I see that you're always off going to different places, more so probably pre-COVID, but again, I've seen you traveling a fair bit, and you're coming down to Adelaide recently more often. So how would you sort of, I guess, what would you say are your top tips for traveling with celiac disease? Because I know a lot of people are scared of traveling because it's outside of their comfort zone. They don't know where to eat. They don't know, what to do to keep safe. So what would you say are your top tips?
Yeah. Well, I always Google. So I use Google to find my information around the different restaurants and the places we're going. I also know that, some places it's going to be far harder to find gluten-free and, than in other places. But Google the restaurants you're going to. And I always, years ago, I always felt embarrassed to say that I had celiac disease. I don't know why, but I just did. I felt embarrassed.
Okay.
But now I walk in and it's like, I have celiac disease. Do you have a gluten-free, and talk to me about it. Tell me what it is. And you know what? I find that most places that we have been to, even to Disneyland. So in 2019, we've been to Disneyland a couple of times. 2019 went to Disneyland.
Yeah.
And, there are a number of the little, foodie places that will actually cater for people with celiac disease, but you have to tell them.
Yeah.
So, and if you tell them, they will, like, the cook will come out or the chef will come out and they'll talk you through, what they've got. So my number one tip is Google the restaurants first, just to see if they at least have a gluten-free menu. And then when you get there, actually talk to them about it. And don't be afraid to walk out if the food that they serve is not going to be good for you.
Yeah.
So, and explain that, thanks very much. And I have done that a few times where I've just said, look, your menu sounds amazing, but unfortunately, because I have celiac disease, I'm not going to be able to eat here. So, and we go out. So, yeah.
What about on planes? How have you found that experience?
You know what? It's funny. I think pre-COVID, you could ring up the airline and you could say, I'm Lisa, this is my seat number, and I have, celiac disease, and they were pretty good. They would cater for you. I haven't found that so much post-COVID in the bit of traveling I've done. And look, I get it. Airlines are trying to get back up and running, and there's all sorts of things going on for them. But I definitely still will ring them. Sometimes they will tell you straight up that they won't be able to get a gluten-free meal on the plane, but they will have snacks. And right now I've mainly been traveling between, I'm from the Gold Coast, so Gold Coast, Adelaide. So, a 2-hour flight, 2.5-hour flight. I can't go without food for 2.5 hours. I'm in trouble. But most of them will have gluten-free snacks. So, the gluten-free chips or gluten-free, as long as you don't mind a bit of, good old junk food, they'll have the chips and the biscuits and that. I know, right? So, but you know what? And not that I want to, it's not about complaining, but it is about giving feedback and saying, hey, I get it, but I'm probably not the only one flying on your airline who actually, has celiac disease, or, even for people who are gluten intolerant.
That's right.
So you need to do better. Like, they need to do better.
So you do
pay good money
to the airline?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. And I think that's important. I think it's really important, even to restaurants, even if they're not displaying, a lot of restaurants you go into, they'll have on their menu, they'll have whether it's gluten-free or, vegetarian or whatever. If they don't, I actually say to them, it would be really helpful if you could display on your menu. So it makes it, because like I said, and it's taken me a long time to get the confidence to go, hang on, I'm, got celiac disease and I need something. Whereas I know some people won't. They'll actually put their health at risk just to stay in a restaurant and eat the food that they think is gluten-free. So,
I agree. Definitely. Yeah, I love the labeling. The labeling is huge, massive help. Yep.
Yeah, right. And you know what?
Definitely.
When you find a good restaurant as well, let them know.
Yeah,
You know,
I
let
always
them
give
know
them
and share
feedback.
that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
because
and they
that's
love to
as
hear it.
important as
It makes them want
yeah,
to look after us then as well. I think that is a great tip.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we've got a little Thai restaurant around the corner from us. We go there all the time,
yeah.
and they know that I'm gluten free, and that I know what's on their menu that is gluten free, which is for Thai food, most of it.
Yeah.
But it's the sauces and that they use. So once they know you're gluten free, they use the different
Yeah.
sauces. So yeah, that's important. Tell people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Biggest thing you can do for your health, that's for sure.
Do you
All right,
know?
sorry.
Do you know what? Even sorry, I was going to say even in the workplace,
Yes.
for morning teas or whatever.
Mhm.
Again, I never used to bother. I go, I don't, no, I'm all right. But you know what? Now, when I go into a workplace, I'm like, you know what? I am gluten free,
Yeah.
and if we're going to have a morning tea or whatever, lunch, whatever, then there needs to be options
An
for
option.
not only me but for others as well. So yeah.
And you're right. It's not always just us. It's very common now to come across another person that needs to eat gluten free when you're at an event or you're out. So yeah, it is looking
Yeah,
out for other people that won't speak up for themselves. So that's fantastic to hear as well.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, I did put it out to my community if they had any questions for you, Lisa. So I had a couple of ladies
Yes.
respond. So one of them is Anne Campanella. I interviewed her recently on the podcast. She's written a memoir called Celiac Mum, and she sent through a couple of questions. So the first one that she had was, how have things changed over time? So we touched on this a little bit, but what would you say has been the biggest thing, I guess, that's changed over the time since, well, it's basically your whole life, isn't it? It's from the beginning. How have
Yeah.
you noticed things have changed?
Look, definitely the availability of gluten-free food, which can I say is a good thing, but is not such a good thing either, because I used to avoid cakes and everything, but now,
Guilty.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, there's the gluten-free. So I think the availability of food,
Yeah.
and I think that's important. Not so much for me. And look, I'm not someone who goes home and cooks. Like I am not that person that'll go and cook something gluten-free.
Yeah.
I like to be able to go buy something and know that it's safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. So mostly
Availability.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
answer. All right. And the other question she had was, what are your best tips for staying healthy?
Well, obviously for me and for anyone who has celiac disease is to avoid gluten altogether. But I also, I haven't delved into it a lot, but just generally keeping our immune system healthy. Because celiac disease is an autoimmune disease, and generally along with that come other autoimmune diseases as well, particularly for women as we get older. But I think getting out, doing some form of movement, whether it's walking, but getting outside, getting some beautiful fresh air, keeping hydrated, eating, like I said, the availability of food is great, but the downside has been I am eating more cakes and rubbish. But trying to stay away from all the processed food anyway, and trying to eat fresh where possible. And I think when we've all heard the tip, stay to the outside of the supermarkets, go around the edges, don't go down those middle aisles, because that's where all the nasties are. Even if they are gluten free, they're still no good for you.
Yeah, that's it. Full of all the junk.
So just exercise, and just having fun, and just accepting that this is what it's not it's not something that needs to prevent us from going out and just living our best life anyway.
And I see that in you all the time. You just live your life to the fullest, and it's so inspiring and awesome to see. Like you have fun and enjoy yourself and be you, which is the best thing you can do. So it's really cool to see.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I've had good role models as well, and I think that's the other good thing. Look out for people like yourself, Belinda, who are really educating people around this space, because there still is a lot of unknowns around it.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, and I still learn. I'm constantly learning. It's just, it's one of those things. Things change and evolve, and we just need to keep up with it. So yeah, it is good.
Yeah.
to learn. And
so yeah, so just, you know, link in with the people who know what they're talking about, and listen.
Yep, good tips. All right, and Hannah had a couple of questions as well. So she said, do you ever feel scared about eating out? Is that something that you feel, or you did share some tips on eating out, but do you feel scared about it?
Not now, I don't, but like before, you know, in that period of time where I didn't want to tell people that I don't know why we don't want to tell people we've got celiac disease, but you know, I'd avoid going out. Like, what would be the point? Because I wouldn't know. But like I said, you know, do a bit of your own research if you're really worried about a restaurant. Don't be afraid to say, you know, no, that you know, I don't want to go to that place because it doesn't serve, you know, gluten-free food. But talk with the restaurant as well, because I know most, you know, I mean, I can't say I know most restaurants, but you know, a lot of restaurants will actually cater for you if they know.
I agree. Yeah. I think that people want your business, they want your money, and they want to look after you because it's their reputation at stake as well. So yeah, I personally don't want people to be fearful of eating out, because it's part of life and it's part of socializing and enjoying being with friends and family. So I think it's a huge part of living with celiac disease to learn how to eat out, definitely.
Absolutely. And even the worst case scenario, if you go somewhere and you're not sure, I mean, you can, you know, you still need to talk to the restaurant, but you know, you can be generally pretty safe with, you know, some fresh veggies or, you know, fresh salad, or you know, like, but still ask, because you don't know what's in the dressings.
That's right. What
they've cut up on the benches before and that sort of stuff. But you know, if you're very, very reactive to any type of gluten,
definitely. And the other one was an interesting question. I'm looking forward to your answer to this. So do you ever feel sad that you're missing out on any food?
Not anymore.
No?
I used to. Do you know, the one food I used to really, really miss out on was pizza. Like back in the day, it was like, you know, pizza. You could just smell it.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, you can go to, you know, pizza places now, and they have gluten-free bases, and you can put all the gluten-free stuff on top.
Yeah.
It has improved.
Terrible.
And
gluten-free pizza, now it's good.
I know. And, you know, I think also, so I think, things are improving. I think also, I don't know, Belinda, I do know that, you know, your beautiful family are very supportive of knowing what, you know, with celiac disease. And I think that's also important as well. Yes. Like there was a time, I've gone off track with the question, but there was a time where like we would cook, you know, Paul, my husband, so he would cook, he'd go, oh, here's your gluten-free pasta, and we're having normal pasta. Because like he'd be like, oh, that gluten-free pasta is absolutely disgusting. Yeah. But over time it has improved, and now that's right. It's like, you know, we have pasta, it's always gluten-free. We have, you know, everything in our place is gluten-free, and everyone just has it now. Yes. So, you know, I think definitely you can enjoy anything. I've got a Thermomix, and, you know, there's gluten-free recipes in Thermomix. So anything you want, really these days you can have. And like I said, you know, I probably shouldn't eat as many cakes and chips and all the gluten-free things now, but you know, I don't think there's a reason that any of us should miss out on. That's right. You know,
it's all about
food.
Balance. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's right. So
yeah, definitely balance. Does anyone else in your family have celiac disease? This is something I'd never ever asked your mum.
No, not well. I've got a nephew who has.
Okay.
So and he was diagnosed. Well, first off, they did the blood test, because, you know, they like, you know, all new to me, because I never had a blood test, obviously, back in the day. But and then he went through the, you know, going and seeing the specialist and having the gastro thing done. But yeah, so he has. We thought my daughter might have had it, so Jess might have had it at some point, but we got her tested, and no, she wasn't.
Okay.
But, you know,
that's good.
It's sort of the first thing I talk to people about now. If they say that they're feeling sick from eating food, I just say, oh, you know, have you actually been tested? Like, Because it could be a simple fix, like,
That's
you
right.
might not need to feel like this, and it could just be, and sure, go and eat some gluten-free food, see if you feel better, but then actually go and get yourself,
do something about it.
properly diagnosed. For
sure, definitely. All right, what has been your biggest challenge living with celiac disease, do you think, Lisa?
I think the biggest challenge, as we talked about, is traveling.
Okay.
And wanting to experience, because for me, food is so important in your traveling experience.
Yes.
And in particularly in Asian countries,
yeah,
like the food is divine, but a lot of it isn't gluten-free. Even though they might be using rice flour and all those things, it's still not entirely gluten-free. So I think that's, for me, is the traveling and wanting to experience foods from different cultures that I do tend, you do miss out on.
Yeah.
So that's probably the worst thing about having celiac disease. But again, Google Translator is amazing.
Okay, that's a good one.
There has to be a bit of trust sometimes in those street stores. I'm not sure that I actually trust what they're giving me just in exchange for my money, but so it can be risky, but I still think even overseas, if you can find good restaurants that cater for tourists who come from who have a myriad of food allergies. So
and there's some fantastic cards that you can use now, like Equal Eats. I don't know if you've heard of them. They do a fantastic
I have not
card, which you can order in many different many different languages rather, and it explains on there that you have celiac disease, what you can and can't eat. And let's just say you were going to Bali, you'd get it printed in Indonesian, and then when you go out for a meal, you just give that to your server and you're well looked after. There's none of that miscommunication. So they are fantastic. So worth looking into.
Absolutely, I will, because we're going to Vietnam in August. So, and I have been thinking a little bit about this, about how do I experience the beautiful Vietnamese food, which, a lot of it is gluten-free, but again, it's the sauces and the things that they put in with it that, can cause some problems. So, but I will definitely get myself some cards.
I went to
see how I go
a few years back and had a wonderful experience. I used a translated card. It wasn't an Equal Eats one because I hadn't heard of their brand back then, but I used a similar one and it was amazing. I just gave it every time I ordered a meal, and I was so looked after, because you never want to get sick when you're in another country. And I was fine. I was so well looked after. Even in the restaurant I stayed in, they baked me my own gluten-free bread every morning.
Oh, wow.
Incredible. So
that's amazing. It's really good, because we cruise a lot as well, and now a lot of the cruise ships cater for gluten. They've got like their own gluten-free area, where all the gluten-free food is cooked there by itself. So
beautiful. Oh, there you go. That's a good one to know. Haven't done the cruise ship thing yet.
Well, we'll get back into. We've got a cruise to Papua New Guinea in November, so it's like everything's opened up again. So
got to go live again.
Be good. Absolutely.
All right, we'll wrap it up shortly because I know you need to go, but I just had one more question. So what advice would you give to others that have a young one who has been diagnosed with celiac disease? Because I know a lot of mums reach out to me and say that they feel guilty and they have a lot of angst around it. So what, as someone that's lived with celiac disease since being very, very little, what advice would you give to those parents?
Well, I'm not a parent of someone who has celiac disease. So my response will be more around just, it's no one's fault. It is what it is. We do live in a time where there is an abundance of, food for, people who have celiac disease. And I think just be understanding, like just, be, I guess, be aware of what happens if your child does eat gluten, and talk to them about it. Talk to the school. Like, again, I'm not a believer in, I don't believe we should exclude cakes and whatever from schools because someone has an allergy. I actually think it's important that we talk to schools and, you know, poor old teachers, we expect them to do so much, but you know what, they can, you know, talk about it. You know, we have this, I can't remember what it is, but, you know, we have Celiac Week every year and when it is, but, you know, just talk about it and say it's okay. And if you, you know, go into someone's place, you know, talk to the parents, take your own snacks, make it normal. I guess it's just make it normal for the kid, you know, to, they're no different. It's not about being different. It's about just, this is something that happens to a lot of, you know, people, and it's normal.
And making them included. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, inclusion's important.
Definitely.
So yeah.
Good tips. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. I've really loved having you.
That's all right.
And chatting with you. Now, if my listeners want to connect with you, where can they find you online that you're happy for them to follow you or reach out?
Well, you know, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I don't talk a lot about my, you know, celiac disease and that journey, but it is an interesting thing that I probably should find myself talking more about. But Facebook, Instagram,
beautiful.
You know, all the socials.
Being the social butterfly that you are. All right.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again. And enjoy the rest of your weekend here in wet Adelaide. We'll talk to you soon.
I know, wet and cold and windy. Thanks, Belinda.
All right. Thanks so much. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, head to belindawhelan.com to get yourself a free copy of my exclusive ebook, 11 Mistakes People Make Going Gluten-Free Living with Celiac Disease.